Hello, this is Rick again, your bicycle fitness coach. I've gotten enough requests and questions about the Shimano Crank recall. I'm not going to rehash what's out there in the industry currently, but I'm going to give you a quick few slides of what to look for, how to check if yours are affected. Very simple process, and if they are, take them to the local bike shop. If they're not, Shimano says, don't worry about it, but keep checking them. So first of all, before you remove your pedals and Shimano Crank from your bike, let's see if you're part of the recall. So the problem is that the high stress area on a crank is the part on the top in the red line where the high stress area. The 3D force that is applied is when the pedal, since it's outboard of the center line of the crank, you're never pushing straight down on the crank arm. You're twisting and bending the crank arm to the side. You're putting a lateral force all the way around the pedal stroke. And that is a lot to ask for glue to hold together two pieces of metal. So basically, you're twisting the crank arm. When you're pedaling, you're twisting, the pedal's out here and you're twisting the crank arm, pushing down on the pedal and just torquing the crank arm and putting a high stress on the top of the crank arm. And that's where we're seeing a lot of these failures happen. Of course, there's other forces on the crank arm, but we're primarily the lateral force is the driving factor for the failures. So first of all, write down this key information on both crank arms. They're probably going to be a little bit different. This is the drive side or the non-drive side. Make sure that you do the same thing. Write it down. You'll want to write the model number down, the production code, and the serial number, again, on both crank arms. So first of all, if your model number matches any of these, Shimano says you could be affected. In our case, yes, the Dura-Ace FC9100P is possibly affected. Next, we want to go to the production code. The production codes are listed here. You're going to check to see if the model number matches. Now, if the production code matches. Again, if ours is right here, the PK. PK matches, and yes, the crank is affected. Lastly, you want to remove the pedals while the crank is still attached. I've seen a lot of videos out there where the people just bring in the crank arm, the crank set with the pedals still attached, and you're making it more difficult on the mechanic to be able to take the pedals off if there's nothing to hold the crank together. They're going to clamp it into a vise and then remove the pedals that way. So remove the pedals first before you take it in. Make it easier on your bike mechanic. Lastly, remove the crank set and then take it into your local bike shop. With that, our next video, we're going to get into rotor, and why, when this whole thing started, why I started recommending rotor, not only because of the manufacturing process. It's built out of a solid bar stock of aluminum, and we'll get into a little bit about the manufacturing process and the differences between the Vegas and the All-Do, and also the fact that rotor does create more crank arm lengths than Shimano or SRAM does. And it gives the client a better crank length solution for their particular leg length, solving a lot of knee pain issues that accompany bikes with too long of crank arms. So with that, wait for our next video where we're going to discuss rotor and how their solution is far superior to Shimano's. Until then, bike fitness coaching.